Hello, comic book junkies, it's the Frog Queen here, and today I'm taking a semi-critical look at the Forever War, which has recently been re-released as a collected edition by Titan Comics. And before I dive in, please feel free to follow me on Instagram if you want to see what I'm up to when I'm not on YouTube. I have a lot of updates on there. I'm the most active on Instagram, although you can find me on Facebook and Twitter. I just don't use them as much. Also, don't forget to like this video if you like it. And of course, tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get on with it. The Forever War is a 1988 Belgian science fiction graphic novel trilogy drawn by Marvano and closely based on the award-winning novel The Forever War by Joe Haldeman, published in the mid-1970s. Haldeman said he supplied all the dialogue and scripted the comic like a movie. It was drawn in the Ligne Claire style and originally published in Dutch. The Forever War tells the story of William Mandela, an elite soldier fighting for Earth in a centuries-long interstellar war against the Taurans. The series focused mainly on the dehumanizing effects of war and its attendant bureaucracy. I've taken that little bit from Wikipedia, you can probably tell. So, although I have not read the original novel, it is said that the graphic novel stays very close to the events of the novel, and it includes much of the original dialogue. It's worth noting here that much of the story is said to reflect Haldeman's personal experience and reflection on his time in the Vietnam War. So Brandon Graham had been talking about this book on his Instagram, and I was chatting with them like, what is this book? Why don't I know it? Well, of course, the answer is that, I'm kind of an idiot, and I just missed this book in all my years of comics consumption. Okay, it's not really my fault. No one can really know every comic out there, can they? I don't know. I felt like I should know this one, though. Titan has republished the book, and so I got a copy, I read it, and now I'm talking about it. So since I just mentioned Brandon Graham, I want to plug the awesome new podcast he is doing with Farrell Dalrymple. It's on SoundCloud. I'll link it in the description below. It's awesome. They have a few episodes out already, and they talk about their experience in the industry. They talk about their comics that they love. And they go off on these really fun tangents about pretty much everything and anything. Now, I'll warn you, and I don't think either of them will disagree with me here, that when I listened to the first couple episodes, I kept laughing because the two of them just compliment each other back and forth so much that it's adorable how much they love each other. And you can tell that they're really, really close friends, but it is kinda hilarious. Anyway, let's go back to The Forever War. So the entire story is told almost exclusively through narration by our main character, William Mandela, who's reflecting on his time fighting in the war against the Taurans, which is known as the Forever War, a war which lasted 1143 years. The entire time, not much is known about the enemy, but it does become clear quickly that perhaps the Taurans are not so much the evil that they're made out to be. Something I noted while reading this story that was kind of felt through the entire book, it really felt fraught with a homophobic sentiment from the main character. And it's important to remember here that this is just the character's feelings, where he is when he first enters the war, and it doesn't automatically echo the personal feelings of the writer. However, he does mention that the government prefers homosexuality in civilians because it helps control the population, which has, of course, been a long time scare tactic through the ages for those religious types in our world, of course, who are deeply against homosexuality because, you're, not furthering humanity and therefore it's unnatural, blah, 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 blah. But by the end of the book, humanity has shifted, and there are different planets dedicated to the old sexual practices, which, by the end of the book, years in the future, it's apparently the old sexual practices are hetero. And there are planets, the regular planets and colonies, where everyone else is homosexual, and that's the norm. They're also all clones, which is a whole other can of worms entirely, which we'll talk about later. This all makes for a very confusing fictional future, but you'll see. So we'll talk a bit more about this as we progress through the story, but let's go back to the beginning. The main character, identified as Mandela by the name on his uniform, talks about inhumanity, but you get a real sense that he despises humanity at this moment when they destroy the Torrens and the telepathic beasts they meet when they first set down on a distant planet for the first time to engage. We get a decent explanation of the present state of technology in the book here too. Humanity has set up these portal planets. From the way I understood it in the book, these planets are close to what they call collapsar jumps. And collapsar jumps were apparently first discovered in 1998. And it's the only form of travel from star to star, which is using a black hole, which is known also here as a collapsar. The books tell us that they had to rewrite the theory of relativity, as the speed of light is actually surpassed here. As a result of this discovery, sending people into space for exploration costs apparently less than the historic moon landing in 1969, because they don't have to use as much fuel. There's a lot of other technologies in the story, mostly focused on the militarization of things like brainwashing. Soldiers are sent into an emotionless killing frenzy on the battlefield, and they obliterate an entire unarmed Tauren colony. All but one who actually escapes to tell the tale, likely furthering the war, of course. William Mandela sees a parallel from this event to events in human history where humans destroyed each other mercilessly, and this is where Mandela resigns himself to the idea that cruelty and destruction is a part of human nature. So let's focus a second on this concept of human nature that comes up more than once in this book. On one hand, in the middle of the book, when Mandela realizes, when he gets back from combat, that the new present humanity accepts homosexuality and that there's no taboo surrounding it or societal stigma, this seems like an idyllic future to us, the reader. But because of Mandela's perspective on homosexuality as unnatural, the entire book takes on a really negative tone towards homosexuality. You can't help but feel the author himself feels very prejudiced against it, and any positive feelings of acceptance and equality are somewhat erased. In fact, even later in the book, and more extremely at the very end of the book, each time Mandela drops back to Earth colonies from another combat deployment in yet another future, centuries further into humanity's timeline, he feels persecuted as being one of the few hetero-humans left. There are lots of sentiments and assumptions made by our main character on what is considered to be true human nature. Ideas that heterosexuality is normal and natural while also focusing on the dark side of humanity, which he believes is also natural, destruction and blind hatred. The entire war, it appears, was started out of a blind fear and miscommunication, or complete lack of communication, as humanity could not properly communicate with the supposedly telepathic Taurens. Much of the story is then focused on, as previously stated, the dehumanizing effects of war, including the treatment of veterans by the military and society. They come back from fighting to find loved ones in various states of decay, as they've been away for decades due to the leap in time when traveling the collapsars. Many have found that loved ones have died or are currently dying. The veterans remain relatively the same age as when they were first deployed, and the veterans find themselves strangers in their own society, and many of them seek to re-enlist as a result. And that is what Mandela does after his mother passes after his return from his first deployment. This is when he also finds out that homosexuality is being encouraged as a way to combat population growth. Right. Mandela spends the remainder of the book pretty much enlisted, and due to his service record, he is promoted into a leadership position reluctantly, which he has no experience at. He's also separated from his mate, a fellow soldier that he loves dearly. They are sent to separate places, which means separate times, and they may never see each other again because one could not return for a century or several centuries. They have no idea if they will ever see each other again. Many events take place, which I'm not going to go into detail, but the entire joke is essentially, as Mandela barely escapes with his life, he returns to the base named Stargate, only to find out that the war is over. The Taurans, who turned out to be a natural group consciousness clone species, an idea further explored in the sequel trilogy, which I have not yet read, have made peace with humanity, which is now also a clone species. There you go. And now humanity has also moved to a group consciousness, or evolved, you could say. So once again, the veterans are thrust into a home they cannot recognize and have no sense of belonging. There's a big surprise for Mandela, but I'll leave that out just in case you are watching this and haven't read the book, because even though I've waved the spoiler warning flag, I want to leave you with some surprises. So I actually read this graphic novel over 2 months ago, and I knew I was going to make a video on it, but I really wanted to reread it a few times before diving into it. And I also wanted to know more about the author because, as with so many science fiction novels, there's a lot of politics involved here that really feel like they come from the time and political climate of when it was written. And Haldeman was actually wounded in combat. He was a Vietnam War veteran. So a lot of the dehumanizing effects, his feelings about the Vietnam War, and his inability to cope at first with returning from the war to get back into normal society, now having become horribly injured. It took him a long time to recover from that and adjust to normal life again. All of that is really felt in this book. It's very realistic, and much of the book is actually about Mandela's struggle trying to cope with being back in society, one that he doesn't recognize, and basically the poor treatment of the veterans, which, you know, definitely is felt by the United States. Many veterans in the United States. And I can say definitely Canada, too. I mean, there's still poor treatment for veterans to this day. A lot of these sentiments are still very relevant and timely, making this book feel quite timeless. Okay, well, I guess that's it for this video. I wanted to talk more in depth on a few other items in the book, but I feel like this video is getting a little too long as it is. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you will come back and check out my more of my videos. I'm hoping to put out like 2 videos a week. I'm trying. I took a break from YouTube, but I'm back. I've been constantly reading. I have so much stuff to talk about. I'm going to try and start just writing again on my blog, which is thefrogqueen.com. Just talking about comics in general. I also have a vlog channel that I keep meaning to utilize, and I'm hoping to start that up this week. We'll see. Thanks for being patient with me. Anyways, until next time, read something good.